Hi there, CoronaTV viewers. I'm Johnny Damon.
You're my bobblehead Joel today, just nod up and down if you agree. Welcome to the show, Mitch Joel. How are you?
Happy birthday to you.
And just look at those washboard abs.
I know, right? Oh yeah, this is the fittest I've ever been in my life, you know.
Happy birthday from Johnny Damon.
First of all, let's just do the elbow bump. Well, hello everybody. You know what I realized right now? I got my checklist almost perfectly complete, and then I realized that my green screen might need my makeup might need a little bit of adjustment. I think as I said, I need this as much as I need a hole in my head. I think I might have actually seen a hole in my head, but yeah, kind of. But it would be a good hole in my head, because then you would see behind me, and you would see this beautiful array of books belonging to Joe Pulizzi, and maybe this one or that one is the one that you should be looking at, because Joe has crossed over. He's crossed over not to the light side or the dark side, but from nonfiction to fiction. So perfect, I think, given the fact let me adjust my makeup a little bit as I'm calling it. Let's see which direction we could go. And this is the rawness of the rawness of doing a show. I think that looks fine. Yeah, rouge, a little bit of blush, a little bit of eyeshadow. They wear makeup in the broadcast world. They can wear makeup in the virtual world or in the world of streaming as well. But yesterday I had an amazing time with James Rollins, my favorite author, talking. And Joe is in the background at the moment. Is in the green room. Joe, you got to watch that interview, and also I'll send you a link to the after show. Really great tips coming from James Rollins, who actually was a veterinarian, and he became somehow one of the greatest, I think, thriller and action writers. So it was amazing seeing all this crossover. I love seeing all this crossover at the moment. So as I was saying to you, if you didn't know already, now you do, that my guest today is Joe Pulizzi. He's an author, he's a podcaster, he's a marketing speaker, he's an entrepreneur. I call him the king of content. He's the content king, the content marketing king. That is not a hyperbole or exaggeration. It really is true. And you're going to hear from him shortly or soon enough. Quick little announcement, as Steve Garfield would say, which I think is a hat tip to Jay Rosen, Professor Jay Rosen at NYU, whom I'm trying to get on the show. He wrote a piece or a paper called The People, formerly known as The Audience. And so on September 4th, we will be doing our second community episode of CoronaTV. So it's going to be live, whereas the first one was pre-recorded on nothing else but an iPhone. And it's very simple. If you actually want to become a part of this, all you got to do is become a regular on our Zoom after show. This isn't a bait and switch. There is no marketing misdirection here. This is just basically a recognition and a reward for regulars, all the R's, recognition and reward for regulars. So for anyone, quite frankly, that has come to the Zoom after show 2 or 3 or 4 times, I invite them then to become part of the show. And we're going to do this once a month, something I'm pretty excited about. So look out for that on September 4th. Today is National Just Because Day. And I think it's, there are many things to say about just because, but I think the most important thing is do an act of kindness, do something spontaneous, do something that invokes serendipity, do something that indulges yourself, treat yourself just because. For once in your life, don't worry about rules and what society dictates and what norms are and the responsibilities. This is not talking about being, happy-go-lucky, free and doing silly things. This is about maybe doing something that is meaningful just because. You don't need a reason. The reason is just because. So happy National Just Because Day. Just because it's your birthday, I want to send out so many people that I actually know really well. But at the top of the list has to be Heidi Furman, who actually is a Zoom after show regular, but she's a lurker. She doesn't come off microphone or camera until right at the end, and then she shows her face and says hi to everyone, and that's fine too. You can do that on the Zoom after show. So to Jen Frank, to Paul Wilmington, GB Veerman, just happy birthday to you guys. And of course, on LinkedIn as well, to Mike, to Tanu, to Eldon, to Dirk. I hope you're having a great day today. Well, it's time for our seated soliloquy. And the seated soliloquy, of course, has got to do with Joe Pulizzi. But before we do that, let's... you're very welcome, Heidi. Heidi is watching now, August 27th. Who could forget that date? Well, sometimes I have forgotten it, but not because Facebook reminds me as well. And Bob Farnham says, looking forward to today's episode with Joe. I am too as well. But yeah, today's seated soliloquy is called, yep, I went there, Make Marketing Great Again. I'm just going to let that just sink in for a moment. Make marketing great again, or MMGA, MMGA. And I can hear you groaning, and rightfully so. But the fact remains, marketing is in trouble. It's not only looked at as an expense, but in some cases, an unnecessary expense. So much so that when the going gets tough, like present day, marketing gets absolutely slashed. I share a particular vision with my guest today, and that vision is that marketing should be a profit center. We'll discuss this on the show, but as an appetizer, I take you back to my fourth book, Zero, which I co-authored with next week's guest, Martin Albarda. The subtitle of Zero is Zero Paid Media as the New Marketing Model. Don't pay for attention, pay attention was our cutesy tagline. But the bigger, bolder vision was for marketers, and the brands they serve to move from being a tenant to becoming a landlord. Now, if you think about it, the idea of being a tenant is the world of media to a T. We rent eyeballs, impressions, or attention from a middleman or third party. For the most part, our sales pitches are placed alongside unwilling and ungrateful bedfellows in the form of content. Our magnanimous contribution is to subsidize said content, but at the end of the day, any presence or contribution is temporary. We are at the mercy of the landlord, and in some cases, the landlord is a slumlord that taxes our organic content by tightening the spigot of access to it. Facebook. So what if we shifted from being a tenant to a landlord? If tenants rent, then landlords own. And when you own, you can monetize. And when you monetize, you can profit. So what is an owned asset then? The O in Zero. Well, it's your people, your products, your packaging, your clothing, your stores, your trucks, your data, your customer service, and even your relationships, your website, your content. The pain of marketing is real, but so too is the pleasure of profit. It's time to become an asset manager with a diversified portfolio of marketing monetization. And there you have it. And now you're going to have a real treat. You're going to have a little bit of Joe Pulizzi. Let me make the screen a little bit larger for him. Joe is a seven-time author of 6 marketing books and 1 novel. I like the fact that you've separated them. His book, Epic Content Marketing, was named Business Book of the Year by Fortune magazine. He's also an entrepreneur. He's launched 3 businesses with 2 exits. He's the co-founder of the Orange Effect Foundation, which raises money for children who need speech therapy. He's a husband, a father of 2 teenage boys, and he is a guest on CoronaTV. Welcome to the show, Joe Pulizzi.
Now I'm going to have to change my bio and put that right at the end, that I finally made it after, as you and I both know, much trying. made it on the show. Thank you for having me. I couldn't actually said it much better than you just said it about Marketing Profit Center and how even though we have more opportunity than ever before as marketers and enterprises to do this, we continue to get lost in the shuffle of the Facebooks and the Twitters, and boy, social media has just made a mess of it. But it's all there. We can do it. We have access to it. There's no reason why it has to strictly be an expense or subservient, if you will, marketing subservient to the other departments, specifically sales in the organization. And so you said it in your book. I say killing. Robert Rose and I talked about it most specifically because Killing Marketing, which came out in 2017, that was about this business model for enterprises. Yeah, I don't know what it's going to take. You've been talking about it for years. I've been talking about it for years on how we are still, how do we, back to permission marketing in 99 with Seth Godin. We're still trying to say, hey, we're over here while we're using somebody else's channel. And if we would have been focusing on the needs and wants of our audience, building a trusted relationship with them over a long period of time. And then once you do that, then you can monetize it. And we talk about it in the book, Killing Marketing, up to 10 different ways, and take advantage of this convergence of the product and service marketing model and the media model, which nobody has seemed to notice that it's exactly the same thing. The New York Times go-to-market model and the market model for Amazon or Cisco Systems or any other enterprise is actually the very same thing. They just choose to monetize differently based on the audiences they have. It seems to slip the mind of a lot of people, which is fine. I mean, that's why we continue to do what we're doing. Is why I continue to have a podcast and you have this show and just have some fun with it.
But I also think that when you think about fundamental businesses and business models, there are almost two conversations, right? The first conversation is how can we do what we do as well as the people that came before us? So being held to the same standard, the same bar, and being able to monetize traditionally. And then the other half of it, I think, is the ability to monetize non-traditionally. So, even when we look at, for example, a service like Patreon, which I love because in a way it's like a Kickstarter type of funding model with tiers, with experiences, with access. And it doesn't have to just force fit us into a one size fits all, advertising audience quantity model.
Well, so maybe a lot of people don't understand, because when we talk about Marketing Profit Center, they may have a bunch of different thoughts. But let's just say there's two main ways to look at it when you look at marketing as a profit center. One is, and you mentioned, one are direct revenue sources. Patreon or donations is one of them. The low-hanging fruit of advertising is what most people go to. Whether you have a YouTube channel and you want to have advertising against that, that's great. Or your Facebook, you're generating it through advertising. You could run conferences and events, of course, more virtual than in-person events this year for obvious reasons. And obviously the name of the show has something to do with it. But if you look at a company like Salesforce, which I think as of this airing was up 26% at the stock market yesterday, they have had a show called Dreamforce that they probably could have sold for about $1 billion. That's a company that sells CRM software, and they had a separate event that they were monetizing by the millions and had $1 billion asset. So you've got, direct subscriptions. New York Times sells subscriptions. You might sell have a membership site where you're selling, whatever it is, monthly or annual fees, like an Apple Plus or Disney Plus or something like that. All right. So you've got all those direct revenue sources. Those are traditional media sources. That's how media companies make money. Then you've got what we talked about, content marketing. Traditional content marketing are marketing goals that use content and build audience. And then how do you change behavior with those things? So you've got, I want to sell more products and services. So, Procter & Gamble launches a homemade, simple content brand, and they want to sell more shampoo. And they'll do that because they've got a trusted relationship with those people. Or maybe you're an Ernst & Young or something, you have a consulting division and you've created a whole content ebook program and you're going to sell consulting services from that. So you got products and services, and then you've got other things like, oh, okay, well, I'm TD Ameritrade and I send out a magazine called Think Money to a bunch of traders. And I know that people that read that magazine on a regular basis trade 5 times more than those that don't. So you're creating more valuable customers. There may be greater yield, more cross sales. So those, you've got all different ways, traditional and non-traditional ways to make revenue. And when I talk to marketers that say, hey, I'm struggling for budget, I can't find, and I always want to say, look, if you do this right, and it does take some time, but if you do this right and you own and not rent, like you were talking about landlords versus tenants, you can monetize those audiences multiple ways. You don't have to go begging for marketing budget because you will create your own budget. I'll give you the last example, Joseph, because this is important. If you look at a hospital system like a Cleveland Clinic, they created a blog called Health Essentials, I believe, and that all the money that they're raising from outside. So, that the goal of that blog is to drive more revenues through patients. They want more patients to come in the door, but they also sell consulting services on the side. They create their own content for big search engines that will go unnamed on this show. They have their own advertising and subscriptions as part of that. And they are paying for, almost to the penny at this point, the entire marketing program. They don't need an outside budget from corporate because they're creating their own budget and they've just started. So these are the outliers that we think are outliers that should be regular course of business today. But just change is tough. It's tough that we want to plug in content marketing and this idea that we're talking about into the systems we already have when we really need a revolution and we need a different system.
Well, I want to give you one more example, and then also a different aspect of why marketing struggles. But a different example is Zappos and Ritz-Carlton, able to monetize their customer service and the culture of their customer obsession, I should say, where other companies are now looking at them from a B2B standpoint and doing courses and learning how to adopt and adapt and integrate a superior approach to customer centricity. That's another example of how marketing becomes a profit center by monetizing, ancillary or even tangential aspects that might not, fit into this horrible container called brand marketing or advertising.
Or the other good example to that is Disney. They said, oh, we're such great storytellers. We create the greatest stories and the greatest characters. What if we created a university and taught this? And now, of course, they do that and they teach storytelling and they teach, creativity. But those are the types of things that I feel, I'm not going to say content marketing, I'm going to say marketing. So big M marketing, the CMOs, the VPs of marketing, they can't just say, look, we're going to run business as usual and marketing is here to drive sales. I think that marketing can't just be, content marketing can't be a silo, but marketing can't be just off here doing it. So, okay, what are we supposed to do? We're to tell the brand story and generate more sales and products. By the way, that's fine. That's how 99% of companies will do it. They will continue to do it. But the 1% of the most innovative companies in the world, and you're talking about the Apples and the Disneys and the Amazons, they're the ones that are going to say, oh my God, like we can affect so many more people in a positive way if we start to build relationships with them and simply just communicate better. That's all we're really talking about is how do we communicate better? How do you build a better brand? A brand is a relationship between a customer and the organization. How do you build a relationship? With better communication. That's all we're talking. So if you have really good communication over a long period of time, you create a loyal audience. Once you create a loyal audience, any media company knows you can monetize that loyal audience in up to 10 different ways. That's why, you and I have been talking about this, not rocket science, just regular old business models we're talking about that have been around for hundreds of years that the marketing side of the product and service companies of the world, the enterprises, haven't picked up on outside of the ones we just named.
I have to also just go back and do a little hat tip to Jory Desjardins, who was my guest. These days flow. I think it was Monday. But Blogger was another perfect example.
Yeah.
Just thinking back to Dreamforce of creating a conference, monetizing that conference, and creating an entire company around that. I think I came up with a phrase, and I just typed it in now, and maybe this will be the first Joe Squared collaboration. Joe,
is this the first Joseph you've had on beside yourself? What's going on?
No, I think I've had many Joes, but I haven't proposed writing a book with them, which is going to be called Create Your Marketing Budget. But actually, like, it's a little hat tip to you, because I think really what we're saying is, instead of lamenting and complaining and kvetching and whatever the term is about your marketing budget getting slashed, earn your budget. Maybe that's a better idea.
Yeah.
Earn the budget. Stop complaining about third parties taking it away from you. If you want to protect it and guard it, then let it be your budget and not their budget.
Well, what's a really good point is, because a lot of marketers watching this might say, look, this is very difficult to do. And by the way, it is. Change in any size organization is difficult. But here's the good news if there is any good news about the economic lockdowns and some things that happen to budgets. You've had marketing budgets go absolutely crazy. Some of them have been cut. Many of them, I would say most of them, have moved around. Obviously, our physical event budgets went to virtual events, went to social ads, went other places. I have been finding, in talking to some senior level marketers, that they're more open to new ideas than they've been in a very long time, because you're basically at zero marketing budget. You're starting out like, where do we place things again? It's almost like starting at the beginning of the year. You have an opportunity to do some beta tests, some pilot tests, to say, look, this is a really big idea. Can we give 10% of the budget to this? Can we do what Google's been doing for a long time, where say, 10% of our time, let's focus on this really big, possibly multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar idea. Is it worth it? At this, maybe they weren't going to say that 6 months ago, but maybe right now they're open to that idea. So I think that's the opportunity right now.
So the openness is an important point. And again, something that was mentioned even earlier this week with Richie Glassberg. What does openness mean? But now let's almost talk about maybe not closedness, the opposite of openness in this particular case. But you are truly, can I call you the father, the king of content marketing? But the king is not happy with his subjects right now. The state of content marketing, and I know it's something that's on your mind right now, that companies are still not getting it. Well, what does that mean? What is your kind of opening salvo in terms of where we are right now, with a little asterisk that says see COVID-19?
Look, I'm not going to go negative. There's lots of ways that we could go negative right now. I'm not going to go negative.
This show is about hope, positivity, and optimism.
That's why I'm going to go the other direction. I mean, I've been in marketing for over 20 years now. I had a full head of hair when I started in this business. And I've been preaching these ideals of content marketing for probably 17, 18 years. So the good news is that almost every enterprise that I continue to deal with, that I talk to, they've espoused some parts of content marketing. They have content creation specialists. Some people have chief content officers, which is amazing, director of content marketing, but most still treat it as a side project. It's all right, well, we need to have search engine keywords, so let's create some blog content still today. Okay, let's dabble. We'll do this little podcast, but even though we're going to do the podcast, we've got to get in the sales pitch on our product and service during this was supposed to be a value driven podcast. Let's do a webinar series, but the webinar series can only focus on what our products and services can do. So basically, enterprises are creating more and more content than they have ever had before, probably create more content than any other asset produced. But that's important when you talk about an asset. They're not creating an asset. They're just creating stuff. Most of the stuff does not get engaged with. Most of the stuff is, frankly, a waste of time. And if you look at some research, so if you look at some Content Marketing Institute research, you'll say the average enterprise engages in 14 to 16 different activities. They're doing webinars, virtual events, in-person events, podcasts. They're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it, all the way up to 16. If you honestly look at what they're doing, maybe one is actually making an impact in the business. And when I say maybe one, I'm being generous. So they're doing 14 to 16 things. How many is really making an impact on the overall business and the impact on their customers' lives? Not much. So here's my, there's lots of directions we could go with this. My big recommendation is now is the perfect time to start killing some of those activities that aren't additive to the customer relationship or to your company. So, the way I like to put it is you only have so much content energy. If you had, think of it like a chocolate bar, right? You're going to take that Hershey's chocolate bar, you're going to break it up into a bunch of pieces. That's all you have for content energy. So most organizations will take one piece and they put it to each thing. And they say, oh, we're going to have a mediocre webinar series. We're going to have a so-so blog. We're going to have a really awful e-newsletter. So they basically become mediocre. I want you to slice all that off and say, let's just say podcast and an e-newsletter. We're going to create the greatest podcast in our industry to that audience with this content tilt, and the absolute most valuable e-newsletter to that audience, and everything else, let's say, just becomes feedback channels, customer service channels. What if you did? Now that's a big, people will be scared to do that. They're like, oh my God, we have to do the blog. Do you have to do the blog? If you packed up all that blog content and put it in a box and shipped it away, would any of your customers notice at all? Probably not. So let's be great and focus on something. Now, I'm not saying there's not a time to diversify like a media company would, but that's later. Once a Huffington Post got their first blog off the ground and it was really successful, then they went to blog 2. Now they're up to blog 400, right? But it takes time. First, be the leading expert in your channel. Get to what Brian Clark always called a minimum viable audience. Go there, then you can diversify later. And that's what I would recommend. There's just content run amok all over the place. And my question when I talk to marketers is, why are you doing that? What is it doing to the business? How is it helping your relationship with your customers? And most of the time, it's like a deer in headlights. They don't have really good answers for them besides somebody said we should do them. I think it's working. We've been doing it for 3 years, and that's not good enough anymore.
I have to say that there was a couple of insights there that I thought were just tremendous. This idea of content energy, it's such a rich and visualization almost. But it's also as a metaphor or an analogy. Like when we think about emotional intelligence, we think of a bank account with the ability to deposit or withdraw with limited talent, right? Because we know that we have limited time, we have limited talent, we have limited budget, and I think this it's an original idea, which is now during the time of COVID. This is the time for us to be prioritizing and killing. And
that's right.
I'll use even CoronaTV as an example. You can feel free to critique or offer some advice. I'm looking for advice too, but it's funny. The show is on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and Periscope and of course Twitch, which is my best platform, even though there's only one person that watches or none. But as we were saying before, Twitch could become the platform of the future. But then what I do is there's a Zoom after show, and then I stream that Zoom after show live on Facebook. And then there's a file, which sometimes I upload to YouTube if there's time. And then I create my Corona Bite, which is a 1-minute highlight reel, which is going to be really hard today because there already are about 17 candidates for that 1 minute. And that goes on Instagram and on TikTok. And then there's an audio podcast version as well. I'm one person doing all of this.
It's a lot.
So on one hand, I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe it's time to cut. But on the other hand, I'm thinking if I'm one person doing all of this, there are companies out there with departments that are maybe not doing what I'm doing as well. So it's two ways of looking at it. But what are your thoughts, even in terms of what I just said to you about how I'm building this community and audience with video, with a highlight 1-minute clip, with an audio version, and what am I missing? Should I be thinking about captions and transcripts or should I just chill out and go have a drink.
Well, first of all, congratulations. You're doing you're like the Ping FM of Corona TV. You know, I mean, it's amazing how many places
I'm getting
going
anxious
at one time. Well, if you get to the one point where you're talking about just because you can doesn't mean you should. Now you are in the point where I would call, if I'm looking at your business model, you're right around the content tilt, building the base. You're searching for your differentiation, and you're searching for what's going to ultimately be your base. You're testing. You're in test mode. You don't know. You might say, ultimately, let's talk about Twitch. I'm a big fan of Twitch. You might be testing all these channels because that's all you're doing right now, and you might say Twitch is where it's at. So when you get to Twitch, you basically forego some of these other ones. You kill these other channels. You might say, Facebook, no good. Killing Facebook, and I'm going to Twitch. Then Twitch is your base. And then you're saying, okay, well, what are my distribution arms off of that? Your distribution arms might say, okay, Twitch and Instagram and Twitter or LinkedIn. Let's put LinkedIn's probably better. Those two are your offshoots. Give you a really good example of somebody who's done this really well. Look at Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan just sold for his licensed his podcast for $275 million or something. Spotify.
Yeah.
What a great deal that was. But look how he did it. He has the podcast. The podcast became his base. The two ways he distributes that, well, he's going to Spotify, but the two ways he really distributed is mostly off of iTunes and then YouTube was his distribution. Then he only focused on, I believe it was Instagram and Twitter. I think it was those two. Doesn't do much on Facebook at all. Basically doesn't do anything on TikTok. Made business decisions to say, look, I don't have the energy to be great on Facebook or TikTok. I'm not going there. So back to you. My recommendation would be at some point when you feel like you have enough data, you can start to say, I really feel the base is going to be Twitch or whatever it is. And instead of distributing out to 17 channels, I'm going to do really good, localized, original, valuable distribution of some of that show to these two other outlets. And that will start feeding in and building your audience over time. And I'm not just, the only reason this is how media companies for the most part have been doing it, for the last 20 years, for sure, when we opened up all these channels, but more the past 200 years. It's just, it just took longer 200 years ago. Now this is pretty much how you get it done. So then you'll save yourself 20%, 30% of time, 40% of time, and you can decide what you're going to do with that. You might put that back into the show while you build that audience, which is going to be another 9 to 12 months of building audience. And then you're going to say, wow, now I have a minimum viable audience, and now I can monetize that audience with a membership program, a behind the scenes, VIP access thing. I'm going to sell another book. I've gotten 10,000 more per speaking event now, whatever the case is, and how you're going to monetize it.
So Joey says, wow, this dude is smart. That's
Joey, you're smart because you're Joey. Joey. We got all kinds of Joeys.
That's the Joe Cube. That's why I was persistent. And Bob says, I can't believe I haven't been listening to Joe's podcast, Content Inc. I just subscribed.
Oh, thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
Bob has a follow-up question. He said, couldn't you use those other platforms in a very basic way to direct people to the channels you're using?
Yes, no, Bob, that's a great question. Absolutely. And maybe I wasn't specific enough, but one has to be the base. You have the podcast, you have the mini magazine, you have the event series, you have what's the thing that you're great at? What's your one thing? And then how do you help facilitate a subscriber? So what you're trying to say is, okay, great. I've got the one thing, and what you're trying to get to is, and we in Content Inc., I call this the subscriber hierarchy. You want to get to the top of the hierarchy. The top of the hierarchy is an email subscriber or membership program where you get an email, where you own the land, as you'd say, Joe, right? You're going to own that land, and all the stuff at the bottom, those are all rentals. Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, you're renting space. So you can rent space, Bob, as distribution arms, but what you want to do is move up the chain. So you might say, okay, I'm going to have a show, and that show is going to be on YouTube. Great. I've got a lot of YouTube subscribers, but I don't control anything that YouTube does. YouTube could turn off tomorrow like Google Plus did and be such a waste. What do? Well, over that time, like if you look at what the great YouTubers are doing right now, they're saying, okay, we need some email or membership component, because if YouTube turns off, where am I going to go? But in the meantime, what's your distribution? You might say, in addition to YouTube, I have this amazing audience of Twitter subscribers, and I have a business Facebook page, whatever. And those are your two distribution forces, where you have your own original content calendars that are driving that. But as you build audiences on those channels, you drive them back to the base, and the base goes to email. It's actually really, if you draw it out, Bob, for yourself and say, base, I want to get to email subscribership, distribution leads back to base to email. That's it. That's how any enterprise does it. That's how Joseph does it. That's how I do it. But that's not how a lot of as we talked about, Joseph, that's not how a lot of marketing enterprises do it right now, because they're sort of slapping content all over the place.
And Anne-Marie basically just reinforces what you were saying, which is this idea of prioritizing platforms and then being able to test and learn and see what happens, down the line. So I'll tell you something else that will blow your mind. You probably know the answer. This is the part of the show where I quiz you, Joe.
Oh, geez.
Do you know how many episodes roughly of Joe Rogan's podcast he has put out before, or pretty much in accordance with when he sold his show?
Yeah, he's at, oh man, I'm going to be wrong on this by about 100 or so, but I think he's in the 1400s, maybe 1480. Is that right? Or is he at 15 yet?
And when you get to like 1480, you have to be, I don't know, but
oh, okay. I thought you were quizzing me. Yes.
No, I do know. No, I do know. What I meant is I don't know the exact number, but you're right. That blew my mind. Which is because people look at it and they go, how can Joe Rogan sell his podcast and that seems like a lot of money and it seems so easy and maybe he's got a big audience but it's like this guy his head has been down. Maybe most people haven't heard of him or heard of, quite frankly, I didn't even know he had a podcast until, which episode do you think was the one that got my attention?
Probably Elon Musk.
100%. That was the episode. And suddenly I was like, and suddenly I was subscribed as well.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Well, it takes,
it really is.
It takes, so if you look at, there's no direct timetable. Your timetable is different than my timetable, but generally when you're starting and you're testing and you're building your base, that's about 12 to 18 months of time. And then once you build that base, you get to minimum viable audience. Then you get into diversification. That's another 2 to 3 years. And then you're at a point, let's say around the 4 to 5 year mark, when you're at the sell or go big. You either sell the asset, like we did it for Content Marketing Institute in 2016, which took us 6 years, or you say, okay, now we're going to go big. Like Matthew Patrick, who's a popular YouTuber, he created Game Theory and Film Theory, 2 huge YouTube shows. And instead of selling for millions of dollars like he could right now, which it took him 6 years to get there, 7 years, now he's creating Food Theory. He's deciding to go big and be the theorist of all these different content areas. So yeah, to your point, it takes time. That's why consistency and patience. You have to have your content tilt. You have to have your hook, your differentiation, but you have to deliver that consistently to a specific audience over a long period of time. And that's, media 101.
And it's also content strategy 101, which is a good opportunity as well. Fernando says, I always learn something new every time I hear Joe speak.
Oh, Fernando. Love you, brother.
I think he was referring to me, but it's okay. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. But Bob was saying, where's Steve when you need him? Here he is. He's giving us all this data. First of all, you were exactly right, Joe, because, obviously he sold this. He didn't sell it today. But the thing that's kind of blowing Steve Garfield's mind is the fact that, we are talking 11 years, and that is a lot longer than the 18 to 24 month or the 12 to 18 months. So that just shows you hard work.
True, but let's look at it this way. Joe,
I sense a caveat.
Well, there's no caveat, but time depends on your goals. So
Right.
I mean, when we sold, so I set the goal in 2010 that we wanted to sell Content Marketing Institute by 2015. We didn't make it. We made it in 2016, but I had to get to a certain level because I had a number that I believe, okay, this is the retirement number. This is the goal for family and financial freedom and everything. So that was the decision to go 6 years. Now, Joe, at 5 or 6 years, he could have absolutely sold for 20 or 25 million. Nope. But he held out for almost 300. Pretty good decision for 5 years, unless he, put it into Tesla stock, whatever. Right. The point is that, I mean, we should, get down to it. This is a marketing thing or an individual thing for you and I. What's your goal? Do you have a number? What are you trying to get to? What's your marketing goal? Those things start at the beginning, and then all this comes. So you don't want to forget that. And Joe Rogan's goal was obviously to get to almost 300 million versus 20 or 30 million that he could have got, 5 years before.
I think that's such a great reminder, and I'm glad you took us back to that, because everything is relative, but also everything comes back to a vision, and that time frame must be connected to a goal.
Right.
So I'm gonna do one more little quiz with you, which is, if for people that are regulars on the show that now I quiz you with a famous quote that is at some point, I would say, contextually relevant with the topic at hand. So the question is, who said this? Content marketing comes down to commitment. There's no halfway. You're either in or you're out.
Well, it's either me or Robert Rose. It's one or the other. I don't know. You probably said that yourself a couple of times, I'm assuming.
I've said the phrase "you can't be half pregnant" before, but when it comes to content marketing, that is a Joe Pulizzi original comment, and I like it as well because commitment is such an important word, because it will talk about endurance, it will talk about time frame, it will talk about being true to your ROI, which is another reason, going back to marketing as a profit center, that marketing struggles, because the ROI thing that looms over our head is really out of our reach, because it's so much connected with sales as well. So that's why I love this quote.
And what I love about it too is, by the way, it's not content marketing necessarily versus advertising. What I would like to say is, look, if you do content marketing, do it to the best of your ability, do it strategically, do it integrated. And if you're not going to, just don't do it. You might still have an okay, adequate business buying ads on Facebook. Fine. Are you going to be a great business? No. Are you going to be an innovative business? Probably not. But could you be a business? Could you pay the mortgage and put food on the table? Sure, probably. But if you want to be a great business, then you do have to commit to content marketing. If you do want to change the marketplace, if you do want to change the educational system, the logistics system, you make people's lives better, jobs better, that's where content marketing come in and really make change happen.
Joe, I know that you have a very, very pressing engagement, an unbelievably...
I have priorities.
you have priorities that may or may not have to do with a handicap or the word for. So I'm going to see if I can sneak in even 10 minutes at the Zoom, because you have to leave in about
10.
6.
Yeah,
I
can do 10. Yeah, I can do 10 minutes. But you're right. It's
3:10. You can give me until 3:10.
No. I can't give you 3:10. I'll miss my tea time.
No, you gave us until 3.
I'll give you up to 3.
All right. Well, so what we're going to do then is, even though we could talk about this for hours, I feel like it's important right now to get to some of the things that people should know about you, because you have been a busy boy during this pandemic. But first, we're just going to start off with a little fun fact about you, which I think gets into one of the things that you've that you've gotten up to, and it turns out, you see, we learn all these things about you, that you grew up in and around a funeral home, and this became the impetus and the inspiration for your book, The Will to Die, based on the character of a marketer who takes over a funeral home.
That's true. Oh, I love that show, 6 Feet Under. Yes. So a lot of actually, a lot of people did not know. More people know now because I wrote the novel The Will to Die. But my grandfather ran a funeral home for as long as I can remember. And when I can remember being 3, 4, 5 years old and running around the funeral home like it was like anyone would run around a park. Like I've never had that weird feeling going into a funeral home. And when I was older, probably 16, started working around the funeral home. From 18 to 22, I actually did work at the funeral home, did odd jobs. We don't need to talk about any of those jobs, but I did work every day at a funeral home, learned a lot about the business. And when I decided to write my novel, The Will to Die, I always wanted to take my two passions and interests and experiences. One was marketing, and the other one was, of course, funeral home, and that's how The Will to Die starts. And the main character is Will Pollitt, and he runs a marketing agency, and his father passes away, and he has to take over his father's funeral home. So then that starts. It's a mystery suspense, takes place in a small town, and that's it.
I just want to wish you, congratulations on the crossover. And as I said, I've seen this a lot during the age of COVID. I think it's just fantastic. I'm going to commit to reading this book after I finish my latest James Rollins book. I'm just very proud of you for doing this, because I think it's I don't know that I'll ever get there. I don't know that I even want to get there, but I feel like it's such a incredible accomplishment. So I just wish you just tremendous success with it. And,
do you want the quick backstory on it, on
Sure.
why I wrote it? Here's the real quick backstory. So in 2000, so we sold Content Marketing Institute. I left CMI at the end of 2017, took a full sabbatical year in 2018. If you can do it, I highly recommend it. Basically took the entire year off, never took a meeting, all that kind of stuff. And I was talking to my wife one day, and I don't know how it came up, but I said, why didn't you ever read any of my marketing books, to my wife? And she said, if you write something interesting, I will read it. So she's never read anything besides from that I've written before then, besides the acknowledgments to see what I wrote about her. And that was it. And I said, and of course, what does she like to read? She likes mysteries and thrillers. And I said, I am going to write you a mystery thriller, which was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, fits and starts. And it took me a long time, probably about a year, to actually finish it. Started on it in, I think, January of sometime in 18. Picked it up in 19, finally finished it. Last 3 months, I was on fire. I finally got my rhythm, and she loved it. So then I said, okay, well, I'll publish it since she loved it. So that was why I ended up. So I actually wrote it for my wife. Isn't that romantic? I should get bonus points every day.
That is unbelievably romantic. I'm even more impressed with you right now. All right, so now back to boring business books, but actually with a soul and with a conscience. You put out Corona Marketing this year. I actually downloaded my copy today as well. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about that. And I will also put up the URL so that people can download it themselves. So
my full plan before mid-March of 2020, so you'll understand the time, I started writing my second novel, the follow-up to The Will to Die. I'm in it. I'm a novelist now. I feel like a writer. I'm going to do this thing. And everything changed. And I had a lot of friends and family, and of course, millions of people around the world that are out of a job, that are struggling in marketing. And I'm like, okay, this is I think I can create something helpful for people. So I basically go through, in Corona Marketing, I go through 13 things that I think marketers need to think about now. One is that content energy we talked about. One is do one great thing. So there's another 10 in there that'll right the ship during this great reset, if you will, from a marketing standpoint. And it's weird, Joseph. I've said I put off the second novel right now. I'm totally back in on marketing because I'm writing the second version of my book, Content Inc., which I really believe is the best business model for anybody who's out of a job that needs to do something entrepreneurial. Like, you're doing something amazing here with CoronaTV. I think a lot of other people can do that in their particular niches. And there's a business model behind it. There actually is a model that people can follow. So it's weird. I put the novel stuff to the side, and now I'm back in on. They always drag me back in. Every time into marketing.
Well, it always comes down to purpose. It comes down to passion. It comes down to timing. The final thing, and then we'll squeeze you in for 10 minutes, is I think this is good news for anybody that follows you and is a fan, that you're working on a new version or at least an update to Content Inc. So I guess the call to action is watch the space. Hey guys, if you want to find out more about Joe, go to joepulizzi.com. You can follow him on Twitter. Check out The Will to Die. Download Corona Marketing. And most importantly, he is not just a smart guy, he's a good guy too. Good luck with your game today, but we're gonna jump over to the Zoom after show and maybe just 7 or 8 minutes so people can say hi to you. So Joe, thanks for coming in finally. And
thank you. Yeah. I really appreciate it. I had fun. Anytime.
Come back. We'll do it again.
Sounds good.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.